Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Adam Lemerise, and with me is Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Our special guest tonight is Ed Hunter from the Formula E Zone. Please feel free to leave your questions and comments in the chat box below. Tonight's agenda will be featuring Mercedes leaving Formula E, supercars, esports, Le Mans, and much more. But first, we'll start with a really big news that Mercedes is leaving Formula E after 2022. Kobe?
Thank you, Adam. And with that said, during the season finale, Berlin E-Prix doubleheader weekend, we heard that Mercedes might bow out of the ABB Formula E World Championship. Nick de Vries won the driver's title. Mercedes took home the team's championship thanks to a wonderful effort from both de Vries and his teammate Stoffel Van Dorn. And this morning, Mercedes officially confirmed they'll depart Formula E at the end of Season 8 in August 2022. And how disappointing is it for Formula E to lose the championship winning manufacturer and possibly your first world champion, Nick de Vries, who may have other options outside of Formula E?
It is disappointing, Kobe. Me and Joshua said a few days ago that we didn't think it would happen, and it has happened. Unfortunately, winning the championship hasn't been enough to convince the executives and decision makers at Mercedes to change their mind, sadly. As for Nick de Vries, I think Nick de Vries is going to be fine. I don't quite see him making it to Formula One with Williams, but I do think Mercedes, in whatever form the team is, because I'm sure it's going to survive somehow, they've got too many good people there. Nick Chester, lots of former F1 people, lots of the best people in Formula E. Stephen Lane, who used to be Sam Bird's race engineer, has moved over to from Virgin to Mercedes just before this announcement. So I think it's very disappointing. I do see the team surviving in some form or way. I'm a bit frustrated with how Mercedes have let this drag on so far, because whatever you have to say about BMW and Audi, at least they made the decision early. But yeah, so I think it's disappointing for Formula E from a reputation standpoint, but personally, the writing was always going to be on the wall, really, when Mercedes executives just weren't getting the return on investment and exposure that they hoped they would.
While Mercedes itself is leaving Formula E, the team's leadership group is exploring options for the team itself to continue into the Gen 3 era, like you were saying, Ed, which includes a potential sale to new owners. Mercedes isn't the first German manufacturer to pull out of Formula E. As you also mentioned, Audi and BMW also announced earlier on that they were going to be pulling out of the electric racing series. With that said, all those three German manufacturers leaving Formula E, is the future of the Berlin E-Prix event in jeopardy? And on a much larger note, is the future of Formula E itself in major peril?
Okay, first question, Berlin E-Prix, is that in jeopardy? Yes, but not for those reasons. I think we still got Porsche as a German manufacturer. So I think if German manufacturers are the end, then Porsche on its own is a big enough name to draw a few fans. But a much bigger concern, I was reading an article by Sam Smith from the race just before the Mercedes decision, and it was talking about how he was looking out at the grandstands during a VIP session where all the cars were driving around. The Porsche Taycans were driving a few VIPs around the Berlin circuit. And he said in the grandstands he saw about, maybe if you take away all the VIPs, there were maybe like 2,000 fans at best. And that's really worrying when you consider that there were 10,000 tickets on sale in Berlin. This is what Sam Smith was saying in the article. I'm not sure if it's entirely accurate. It was just a sort of rough guess from maybe a bit of a low point on both days, because he's saying it was each day it was only 2,000 fans he saw in the grandstand, which is quite worrying. But as for sponsorship as well, BMW was the key sponsor, and they're gone, obviously, because they're pulling out Formula E entirely, as well as, the arrangement around Andretti. So I think they're going to have to find a new sponsor. Like I said, Porsche is probably the most likely one, but we might see some other company, like DHL, who used to sponsor the Berlin E-Prix, come back. So yeah, as for the sport as a whole, I think it will survive. I don't think it necessarily needs the manufacturers to survive, but it does, like I say, it's not exactly a great vote of confidence, and it doesn't help with trying to get McLaren in, because they were waiting on the Mercedes decision to decide what to do. and this probably won't convince them to rush into things now. They might take a bit longer or decide not to follow through on their option they signed earlier this year.
And one of the biggest controversies in Formula E is the lack of car development. Formula E wants to prevent the teams from going too crazy with car development in order to keep the competition close, allowing more developments to allow the electric racing technology to evolve and the engineers to showcase their creative mind. But the on-track product may suffer a bit. There's a mixed bag with some teams content while others want to further develop the car. Should Formula E finally allow more development of the cars at the risk of harming the on-track product like we've seen in Formula One? What are some other factors that are causing manufacturers to potentially leave?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting one, something that we've talked about a lot, me and Jack Giordamano in the Formula E Zone podcast. And I think the big thing really is battery development. That is the big thing that manufacturers have complained about, and some of them I have anyway. And what they're doing for Gen 3 as a compromise, and there are a lot of teams that are happy with this. I should point out the 7 that have committed, the manufacturers anyway, there's the 2 customer teams as well. Is that they're going to introduce a sort of fast charging kind of system to sort of, because in the original Gen 1, the battery lasted about half the race at full power, so they had the pit stop where they changed cars. Now there's, I hope you guys are okay on your end. I'm okay on mine, so I'll carry on. There's what was I saying? Yeah, the Gen 2 car couldn't do the whole race. But obviously, there's an issue with energy management not being as big a factor. So Gen 3, they're introducing the fast charging, which we're not sure exactly how that's going to work because it's not been announced yet. But we do know the power output of the Gen 3 cars is going to be really impressive. I think, like I was alluding to earlier, another reason other than battery development, because obviously the manufacturers like Mercedes and BMW really wanted to push that maybe even further than what the Gen 3 rules are doing. Another reason might be just return on investment and the lack of eyeballs on Formula E, which to an extent it's been affected by the pandemic, yes, but also I don't think it's grown quite as much as Formula E would have hoped in terms of viewing figures. They were sort of, it's sort of not really grown compared to seasons 3 and 4, which were sort of end of Gen 1. So Formula E really needs to work on their different marketing strategies and also make sure that in every area of the world it's got decent TV deals, decent social media coverage, and it's getting it out there to the widest amount of people possible. I think that will be key to helping it keep the manufacturers it's got and also put on a display, a show that will help grow the sport. I think it's not necessarily having manufacturers improve the sport as a brand, because we've not already seen that from the likes of Mercedes, who've just kind of pulled out when they haven't instantly got the return on investment, which has seemed a bit short-sighted in my opinion. But yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say about it.
Yes, it's been really nice watching Formula E grow over the years. I remember watching the very first Formula E race when we had our car flipping over. That was an insane finish with Nick Heidfeld flying spectacularly through the air there. And you mentioned the era when we had to do the car swaps in between the race, and now the technology has developed so much that we don't have to do that anymore. And Formula E was able to get all of these manufacturers coming to the sport. Unfortunately, losing Mercedes, Audi, BMW. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next in the ABB FIA Formula E World Championship as we get ready for the next season starting in several months from now. And Ed, I know it's a little late there in the UK, so we're going to let you go right now. Then we'll continue on with the rest of our program. I just wanted to say thank you so much for making a special appearance on Grid tonight on such short notice, and I hope you have a wonderful night of sleep. And it's very early in the morning there in the UK.
Yeah, no worries, Kobe. Adam, enjoy them all.
All right, see you. And now continuing on with the rest of our program. Because of the Delta variant causing the pandemic to go in the wrong direction, NASCAR has decided to tighten up their COVID protocols. Media members will be required to wear masks when interacting with drivers and team personnel, even outdoors. Before this announcement, NASCAR had previously announced an indoor mask requirement. They also plan to reduce interactions between fans and drivers. I know fans aren't really going to enjoy that, But those are NASCAR rules, and everybody has to follow them, whether you agree with it or not. And for the time being, guests won't have access to haulers, the garage stalls, or grids until further notice. Driver intros in Victory Lane will be modified to reduce driver exposure, which includes mass in the holding area and reduced number of people in Victory Lane. NASCAR plans to strictly enforce mask wearing in enclosed areas such as haulers, the media center, bathrooms, infield care center, race control, and NASCAR control suites. Those are some of the changes to the COVID protocols in NASCAR. And today, after NASCAR's announcement yesterday, the NTT IndyCar Series announced that all media members have to wear masks inside the media center and speaking with drivers in the media bullpen, regardless of your vaccination status. Very early this morning, Formula One announced the Japanese Grand Prix has been canceled for the second consecutive year, so we're not going to be racing at Suzuka once again. And later on in the year, we could have questions about the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas, with Texas being a major COVID hotspot right now stateside, and Formula One will announce an updated calendar in the weeks ahead. And now shifting gears to supercars, alongside the Repco Supercars Championship, they'll also have an esports series, the Cash Converter Supercars E-Series through iRacing, a 6-race schedule taking place every Wednesday starting August 25th. There will be 2 different series. The All-Star Series consists of supercars and Dunlop 2 drivers, then the Pro Series, all sim racers. In the All-Star Series, the real-life racers will compete at Charlotte, Pocono, Daytona, Michigan, Bathurst, and Bristol. All of those are NASCAR tracks, minus Mount Panorama. And the Pro Series are going to be racing at the Red Bull Ring, Long Beach, Road America, Bathurst, Phillip Island, and a track chosen by the fans through a vote. And the fans are going to be able to choose between 4 tracks, and those 4 tracks are Silverstone, Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, Monza, and Hockenheim. When racing was able to return from the pandemic, it really seems like the interest in esports has dropped off quite a bit. In NASCAR, they brought back the Pro Invitational Series. We got to see some cool things like a fictional Chicago race a couple of months ago, but overall the interest just wasn't there anymore with esports, and NASCAR ended up canceling the remainder of the Pro Invitational Series season here in 2021. Adam, how can esports racing series keep the fans tuned in, especially with them being more focused on real life action versus virtual?
Well, I will say that last year the Repco Supercar Series also had an East Series, and they went and it was really cool to see those drivers, in sim race compete on tracks here in the United States through iRacing. They did go to Charlotte, they did go to Michigan, and the ratings were through the roof. A lot of people tuned in. Australia, I know I tuned in here in the States, and it's going to be really cool to see them race the tracks that they may not get a chance to because of COVID. Called Supercars at Bristol. That's going to be cool to see. And also, there's going to be a Bathurst Enduro with the best sim racers from Australia competing alongside the supercar drivers and Dunlop Series 2 drivers. I know a lot of people will be watching to see how they do. And, for the time being, I think it's really cool. Like I said, I'll be watching, and overall last year, we had some all-stars from other motorsports competing alongside the supercar drivers. We had NASCAR drivers like Joey Logano and Austin Cindric competing alongside. Yeah, they'd get up real early in the morning and compete alongside drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen, Jamie Whincup, and others. I know fans are ready to see the car back on track, but with this, it's going to be cool to see, and I hope the ratings are just as good as last year.
Yeah, we'll definitely be following those ratings. And I just mentioned the 2 different virtual racing series, all racing at different tracks. However, you might have noticed that Bathurst is on both schedules. And just like Adam just mentioned, that's because all the real life supercars drivers will compete against the sim racers in an online Bathurst endurance race event. It'll be a fun experience for all of those sim racers competing against drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen, Jamie Whincup, Chaz Mostert, and more, and maybe beat those drivers for bragging rights. This is something we could never say in the NASCAR Pro Invitational Series. Early in the pandemic, we did see a mix of Cup, Xfinity, trucks, and ARCA drivers getting involved. As the iRacing Series evolved, it became strictly the 36 charter teams, a couple of invitations, throw that in there, all Cup drivers, and those from other series ineligible to compete. The fun transition to something more serious and business got involved. None of the eNASCAR, iRacing, and Coca-Cola Series racers were allowed to compete against the real-life NASCAR drivers in the Pro Invitational Series. Do you think NASCAR's Pro Invitational Series would have benefited by allowing its professional iRacers to compete against the Cup drivers?
Oh, sure. There's a lot of really good sim racers across the United States that compete in the Coca-Cola eNASCAR series. I'm surprised that NASCAR doesn't allow them to compete alongside, the Cup drivers, to see how they do. I think it'd be pretty cool, and I hope it does happen down the road in the future.
And now looking at this weekend, we'll have the 86th running of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. 62 cars enter at Circuit de la Sarthe, the historic long 38 turn, 8.467 mile French monster of a track. And here it is right here, the track graphic. You see the start finish line right there at the bottom of the graphic. And then you had the Dunlap curve, the Dunlap chicane going through Tatcha Rouge onto the famous Mulsanne Straight. And you have a couple of chicanes in there. And on the opposite end of the track, you'll be going down the Mulsanne on the other end, down into Indianapolis, onto Arnage in the long straight, entering the very tricky Porsche curves very fast, then the Corvette curves, and then you're gonna have a little stretch there into the Fort chicane, and that's one lap around Circuit de la Sarthe in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the 89th running of this great race. One of the greatest crown jewel events in motorsports is a part of the unofficial motorsport Triple Crown. Many racers all over the world want to win the Monaco Grand Prix, the Indianapolis 500, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. If you're fortunate enough to win all three, you may go down in history as one of the greatest racing drivers of all time. Fernando Alonso won 2 Formula One World Championships, the Monaco Grand Prix, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans twice in recent years. He raced in the Indy 500 twice in 3 attempts, but he had no success completing the Triple Crown. Alonso is actually going to be on site at Le Mans this weekend doing demo laps for Alpine. While he won't be competing in the race, there's another driver making an attempt to beat him in a Triple Crown, and based on the way things are this year with the class structure, that might very well be possible, and that driver is JPM Juan Pablo Montoya, who will be racing in LMP2, sharing the number 21 Dragon Speed Orco 7 Gibson with Ben Hanley and Henrique Hedman. Montoya has won the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500 twice. This year at Le Mans is unique because we have the new Le Mans Hypercar class, 2 Toyota hybrids, 2 entries from Glickenhaus, and 1 grandfather Alpine LMP1 car to make up a 5-car LMH class. With there being few cars at the front and some concerns about reliability with this class being so new, this could put an LMP2 car in prime position to steal an overall win. And several years ago at Le Mans, we saw the 2 Jackie Chan DC Racing LMP2 cars leading overall in the final stages until the Toyota passed them to win the race. So certainly we could see an LMP2 car trying to pull off the ultimate upset on Sunday afternoon over in France. And with LMP2 cars being close in lap times and reliability concerns in LMH, do you honestly think, Adam, do those LMP2 cars have a realistic shot at overall victory? And can Juan Pablo Montoya take home the Triple Crown?
I do believe the LMP2 class are going to, I believe the winner could come from an LMP2 car. There's a lot of good, strong contenders in that class. Overall, so much great talent this year at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. You have Indy 500 winners, Formula One winners, overall really good sports car drivers from across the world. Could we see JPM complete the Triple Crown? Oh yeah, and I believe it's going to happen. his team is really, really good. So I wouldn't be surprised if not only I believe they will win their class in LMP2, and I wouldn't be surprised if they if they took the checkered flag overall at Circuit de la Sarthe at the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
I certainly think it's possible that an LMP2 car can play spoiler and potentially take the overall win from one of these LMH prototypes. And as for Juan Pablo Montoya, I don't know if I can say that he's going to win LMP2 class or take home the Triple Crown. It would be a wonderful historic moment for motorsports if Montoya wins that Triple Crown. But looking at the entry list, for Le Mans LMP2 class, there are some very, very strong driver lineups that are going to rival Montoya's driver lineup. But 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 we all know that anything can happen at Le Mans. Those strong driver lineups at the end of the day may not mean a single thing. So Montoya, Dragon Speed, they very well could be in contention, but I think they're going to have an uphill battle because the competition in LMP2 is going to be very strong. And if an LMP2 car really does win this race overall, there's going to be shockwaves on both sides of the Atlantic. And now looking at the GT Pro and GTM fields, they are absolutely stacked. While GT Pro is a little bit smaller with 8 cars, the GTEM has a massive 23 car field, almost rivals the GTD field at the Daytona International Speedway for the season opener in Rolex 24 in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. And in the GTE Pro category, we have those 2 AF Corsa Ferraris, 2 factory Porsches, and 2 privateer Porsches taking the fight against the factory squads. In those privateer Porsches, we have the number 79 Proton WeatherTech entry. Know that sounds familiar because that's the same sponsor, same driver that races in GTLM and IMSA. It's a Pro-Am driver lineup with Cooper McNeil bringing the WeatherTech sponsorship over to the Pro class, and also a reunited drivers pairing, Earl Bamber and Lawrence Van Thor, been together in IMSA for several seasons. Both of them earned the nickname Bam Thor, and with the addition of Cooper McNeil to the lineup, everybody started calling them Mac Bam Thor, so just adding the Mac onto the Bam Thor there. And speaking of Lawrence Van Thor, he'll be fighting for class bragging rights against his own brother, Dries Van Thor, who will be sharing the number 72 Hub Auto Racing Porsche with Alvaro Parent and Maxime Martin. Which Van Thor brother will have the better race, Lawrence or Dries?
Lauren, easily. You take a look at that driver lineup he's got. Oh boy, they've got experience all over the world. And give the fans some perspective. If you want to follow another Porsche team at the circuit, the start at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, you can go online and go follow drivers Matt Campbell at Matt Campbell 22 underscore and Jackson Evans at Jackson Evans underscore on Instagram, and they'll be providing updates on their Dempsey Proton Porsche team competing at Le Mans. Lauren has a heck of a shot to win his class, and it's gonna be just awesome to see everyone back at a track that everybody knows across the motorsports world.
I'm actually going to go the opposite of you, Adam. I'm going to say Dries Van Thor is going to have the better race because this is the factory GT Pro class, and you see the car that Lawrence in. That's a Pro-Am lineup. I think Cooper McNeil is a very fast Am driver, and nothing against him. But look at the driver lineup for Hub Auto. Got Alvaro Parent, Maxime Martin, Dries Van Thor, all pros. Yes, so you have 3 pros in this car, and then in the other car you have 2 pros and 1 AM. And looking at Cooper McNeil's lap times this year in IMSA, and I think it deserves a lot of credit being an AM driver, stepping up to the GTLM class over here in the United States. Yeah, so definitely Cooper deserves a lot of credit for that. And looking at his lap times this season, he's been obviously a little bit off from the pro rated for the gold and platinum FIA rated drivers. He's been a little bit off, and that's to be expected. And in order to keep up with the GT Pro class, you're gonna have to be on your A game and running the best lap times that you can possibly get. And I do think Cooper is gonna do a great job. But if I had to pick one, I think Dries Van Thor is gonna take down his brother Lawrence and finish higher than him, and maybe he'll win the class. We'll just have to wait and see how that folds out. and we only have 6 cars in the field that we've already named, but we can't forget the last two, no other than the parents from Corvette Racing, returning with the number 63 and number 64 Corvette from IMSA. The C8R will be making its Le Mans debut after skipping last year's race because of the pandemic. Corvette hasn't won at Le Mans since 2015, winning Oliver Gavin, Tommy Miller, and Jordan Taylor took GTE Pro class honors. Will Corvette finally end its 5-year drought at Le Mans on Sunday afternoon in France?
Oh yeah, I believe so. You take a look at both their driver lineups, they are very talented. And plus, like we talked about, Jordan Taylor's going to have a very special helmet in honor of the late great Dale Earnhardt. So maybe that'll give him some momentum and going in. I believe it's going to be Corvette or bust in GTE Pro.
And the 24 Hours of Le Mans is such a hard race to win. Some are lucky enough to win multiple times, whether it's the overall victory or just a class victory. Whether or not it's overall or class victory, it's still special at the end of the day because most drivers around the world can't say that they won at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And while other highly talented drivers visit Le Mans, they'll go there for over a decade and still cannot win the race at the twice around the clock French Endurance Classic. On such a challenging circuit, you need to limit mistakes, pace yourself. You can't be racing like it's hour 23 in hour 2, or you're going to have an accident and then it's going to be game over very early before the sun even goes down, and that's exactly what you want to avoid. You want to make sure your car is still running when that sun comes up, because when that sun comes up in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, that gives you, and if you're still in the fight, that gives you some hope that you can win that race, and sometimes you may need a little luck to fall your way. Adam, what are some of your keys to the race?
For me, I'm gonna be looking out for the hypercars, to see how they do. Take a look at both of the Toyota Gazoo racing cars. Their driver lineup is it's hard to beat. Overall, like I said, it's really cool to see. This is one of the best overall sports car races in the world. If you're lucky to win at Le Mans, your name goes in the record books. Your name will be alongside people like Jackie X, Alan McNish, Tom Christensen. A lot of manufacturers have won: Audi, Porsche, Jaguar. People will know your name in the world of motorsports for a very, very long time to come. And moving on, we have some NASCAR news to discuss. JR Motorsports announced that Josh Berry will compete in number 8 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022. It will be a full-time ride next year, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. is really happy that this announcement has been made. Josh Berry said it's a dream of his to be competing. And I believe now with Josh Berry competing full time, he will be going for championships and more wins. And also this weekend, Michael Lennep will not be competing in the number 1 car for Junior Motorsports. Instead, it'll be Josh Berry as Michael Lennep continues to heal from surgery, basically eliminating Michael Lennep from the NASCAR Xfinity Series playoffs. And now it's time for our Pick a Winner segment, and we're going to be doing the overall pick for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So, Kobe, I'll start with you. Who, at the end on Sunday morning, who claims the overall win at the 24 Hours of Le Mans at at the historic Circuit de la Sarthe.
Oh boy, this could be really simple or it could be really difficult. And I think I'm going to make it really difficult. I'm going to say for starters, I'm not going to go with an LMP2 Cinderella victory overall, and I'm not going to go with the obvious pick to win the class, but I think I'm going to pick the Alpine, the number 36 entry. I think Andre Negrel, Nicolas Lapierre, and Matthew Vaxivière is going to shock everybody and win the 24 Hours Le Mans overall for Alpine.
That's a good pick. Me, I'm going to have to go with the Toyota Gazoo racing car of Mike Conway, Kumi Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez from Argentina. I believe the Toyotas overall are going to finish 1-2. And it's going to be and be sure to follow along with our colleague Joshua Birch on his YouTube channel, as he'll be doing a watch along with his sister Megan for complete coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Kobe, it's time to wrap up another edition of Grid Tonight.
Yep, wrapping up another edition of Grid Tonight. And in the United States, be sure to watch the 24 Hours of Le Mans using Motor Trend on Demand online with coverage beginning Saturday morning at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Time. And like you said, Adam, another show in the books. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Grid Network here on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And we definitely encourage you to visit our Patreon page, Invest in Grid Network. Special shout out Colin, Mark, and DeShell for being such wonderful Patreon supporters of Grid Network. I'll also be sure to check out Pawbless. Please consider spoiling your furry friend. They have dog leashes, clothing, and accessories for dogs of all sizes. 10% of your purchase goes towards helping homeless, sick, and rescued dogs. And also check out public.com, the stock market social media home. The link below and referral code gives you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. And on Thursday morning, brand new episode of the Women Racing to Win. Saturday, we're back on the air, noon Eastern Time, Grid Live pre-race. And Sunday, we're going to be back 90 minutes after the Cup race at Michigan for Grid Live wrap-up. And with that said, for Adam Lemerise, Ed Hunter from formerly E-Zone, who was on a little earlier, I'm Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.